I guess we can get started. So before any of that, why don't you introduce yourself to the camera so that everybody knows exactly who you are?
Yeah, hey everyone. I'm Monik. I'm a newly born indie dev creator.
Little baby
I know,
dev.
right? My first game. I came from a corporate background for almost a decade and decided I want to make something, do something creative and make something that a younger version of myself would have really loved. And that's what I've been up to with Future Vibe Check for a little over 2 years now.
Okay. I also want to take a second to introduce myself. Hi, hello. You all probably know me. I'm Buddy Sola. I am the head of marketing for Akupara Games. Monica, you and I know each other is the complicated thing that I don't know how to explain. We went to college together. We play video games all the time,
We played PUBG, we played Destiny. I'm still gonna talk about Destiny because we got to get back into it at some point.
Listen, I have heard lots of good things about the most recent Destiny. What is it, Heretic that they're on now? Didn't that just come out like 3 weeks ago?
I personally fell off. I can't even stand the game anymore because I fell off after Final Ship. I know.
Oh my god,
it's a big deal. Folks know
that's
me. I love
spicy.
that universe, and they couldn't keep me much longer for some reason.
Okay, well, why don't you do me a favor? Let's talk about Future Vibe Check. What is the game? For somebody who's never heard of Future Vibe Check before, what is it that you're like, okay, I have the game for you?
In a nutshell, it's an automation game where you make music. And I've seen over the past couple of years, I think everyone has seen this growth of buildy, crafty, and even automation games. I think even starting as early as, let's say, Minecraft, all the way to recent titles, whether it be Factorio, Satisfactory, Dyson Sphere Program. There's this call towards, I want to get into a digital environment and build stuff and optimize stuff and build logistical paths, which I love and think there's something really fascinating about those types of problems to solve. However, I've always felt, well, what you build, you can't really experience in the real world. And what Future Vibe Check asks the player to do is, hey, imagine if what you were building, what you were crafting, connected to kind of one of the most fundamental things, music. And there's this kind of beauty to it where a lot of the math found in a lot of these games links really well to the beauty and patterns in music theory. And we'll get into this a bit later, but the goal is tapping into that same feel of build, craft, automation, but sublimating that into kind of something divinely human, which is creative energy and playing with music. So that's what Future Vibe Check is in a nutshell. It's an ode to music and automation. There are a lot of interesting elements there, like Eastern philosophy and things like that, which have been resonant for me in my own life that I wanted to include in this game. But that's the core of it, is music and automation.
Yeah, the thing everybody talks about whenever they, because at this point we have showed the demo to a ton of people. Everybody always mentions Alan Watts at the beginning, which I did not realize. I thought I was so special. You know what I mean? I'm like not one of those other, not like other girls who I was like, oh, I care about, this philosophy professor who's, I don't know, recordings are just famous and everybody knows them. And I'm actually kind of basic. Where was the kind of inspiration for that coming from?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I wanted to make something that a younger version of myself would have loved. And I think the three biggest constants in my life have been music, playing, creating. I've made my own headphones, like goofy things like that, video games, obviously, and then Eastern philosophy. And for me, I find when I look at the gaming landscape today, in really all forms of media, you don't really see that much representation of things, let's say mindfulness. We see mindfulness and yoga and all of these different things capturing the minds in other spheres of media. But I personally haven't seen a lot of it done in gaming. And so for me, I felt like, okay, here's an untapped landscape that I resonate with, that I found to be helpful in my own life. I feel like in an increasingly chaotic world, having some grounding to understand how you maneuver through it. And I think, mindfulness is one of those tools in a toolbox to do so. That'd be cool to explore, not only thematically, but also, from an iconography perspective, art style perspective. What happens when you bring, the wisdom of the East into a game form, into its narrative, into the things that are being done, the characters themselves. And so that was a big driving force for me in how I thought about the art style and some of the themes that are explored in the game outside of the automation loop. And it's subversive from the perspective of the automation game itself has this end goal of, endless growth at all costs. It's like, towards what end? And what do you get at that end, or is the journey far more powerful to molding your own mind? And so that's kind of some of the theming I'm playing around with. So Alan Watts is in there. There's Ram Dass in there. There's Jiddu Krishnamurti. There's a whole host of characters. There's a sequence in the game I'm working on where you're gonna just meditate with Ram Dass for like 5 minutes. Close your eyes. It gets weird, and I'm excited for it. But yeah, that's some of the rationale of why I wanted to include some of this stuff, because I found it helpful, and I think it's a untapped area and landscape for games.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And especially, it's funny, I don't know that you could have chosen a better venue than Automation Games. Maybe if it was like some weird 4X grand strategy title, it would be more diametrically opposed, right? But like the nature of sort of Automation Games is all about this, the optimization, right? That drive for optimization.
Yes, and balance.
Yes, exactly. And I actually think, in a kind of counterintuitive way, that dovetails so nicely with this sort of like philosophical grounding, right?
Yes.
Because in a certain sense, right, meditation, mindfulness, these are optimization techniques that people are constantly reporting as incredibly valuable to their sort of personal lives. And it's the exact same sort of process as me going through in an automation game, and like super specifically making the time. Whenever I play automation games, this is what I always get focused on. I want to create mathematically perfect loops so that I am using every resource like the second that it hits the the extractor or whatever else. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that music and especially this Eastern philosophy really kind of combines to make a perfect product.
Oh, that's a phenomenal point, because I feel like even when I'm playing automation games, it's very meditative. When I'm setting up lanes and thinking through things, I get in the zone very easily. And that's why, like in Future Vibe Check, I play around with this concept of conveyor belts and call them flow.
Yeah.
Because always I recognize when I was playing these games, I'm like, I'm in a flow state when I just feel like things are coming together so well, and everything is automating beautifully, and it's just harmonious balance. And it's like, okay, how do you translate that into sound, into something you can actually experience? So the balance you've manifested digitally in this environment is something you can actually hear in real time. Is definitely part of the goal.
Yeah, I think that is so deeply unique. One of the things I do want to talk about a little bit is kind of the reason that we're having this conversation, right?
Yeah.
So obviously you chose to publish with Akupara Games. I work for Akupara. Why did you make that decision? Where did the partnership come from, do you feel like?
Yeah, no. I was very blessed that I had a couple of different folks I was talking to, and for me, the things that really mattered, first and foremost, in the name itself, Akupara is the cosmic world turtle in Hindu mythology. So it's like, wait a minute, that's a sign right there that we need to partner together. But for me, I felt like I knew that automation game players would like this sort of game because it's unique, and it's a different spin on what they're used to. But for me, what was really important is, how do you get access to a broader audience and a more diverse audience? And what I felt and I know that Akupara has is the guiding principle for y'all is good games, diverse genres. And I think there's a truth there where, even when I look at myself when I'm playing video games, I don't only play automation games. I'm playing a wide set of games. I'm playing pretty much any indie game that I think looks cool and has a unique mechanic and is trying to push the boundary on something. And I feel like that as a tentpole, I found in Akupara as well, where I remember one of our earlier conversations, you're like, your thesis on audiences resonated with me, because I believe that's right, especially in today's environment, is yes, people have their proclivities, but something's cool and it's, unique, they're going to go towards it. And I think Akupara has that representation in the portfolio. So I felt like that type of community that you all have already built would appreciate what Future Vibe Check's trying to do, even if they've previously felt like these automation games are inaccessible or too tough or kind of not interesting based on the aesthetics. So that was kind of the core reason why I chose Akupara.
Okay, I have a saying for this, like the empty chair phrase. It's this thing where I say, I haven't said this in a long time, but it's one of my famous slogans. Okay, it's like, if you ask me to show you a gamer who's only a fan of one genre, I'll show you an empty chair, because that doesn't exist. Right. Everybody crosses over with a million different, there are FPS players who also really love grand strategy games, right? There are music, like rhythm game players who are also going to go insane for an automation game. And
Right.
something like Future Vibe Check is where kind of those like crossed paths, I think very much meet. And I also think that, you know, it's the kind of thing I think about this all the time. How can I make or sort of market a game that is intended for one audience that is not, you know, that's like not core to that audience? I can definitely see the way that I want to bring a roguelike deck builder to roguelike deck builder fans. It's a lot harder to bring that game to narrative RPG fans, but I think actually maybe you can do that from you know, from time to time. And I don't know, it's something that we try and focus on and go for. What do you think players can expect to experience in Future Vibe Check?
You know, first and foremost, making sick beats and making sick vibes. Like, that is the goal there. You know, the game has we'll talk about the procedural music system in a bit, but you know, over 100 instruments. You can actually make your own synth instrument from scratch. It's one of the things I'm most proud of, where I don't know if this is a first in the game, but you can actually set the waveforms and learn about how to actually create a synth sound from square waves, sine waves, combining them, ADS, or all the stuff you're going to learn about in the game. So that's number one, is you're going to be able to make music and without needing to know any sort of music theory and compose. I think number two is you're going to solve some pretty unique challenges in the automation game framework. I mean, the game has all the things you would expect: belts, inserters, mergers, sorters, splitters. But by tying it to music creation and then also tying it to something spatial, which I'll get into, is, you know, you think you have the answer, but it's not so clear, and you have to really try new things to get to an appropriate answer. It's kind of this magic moment where very recently in the game I made some pretty significant changes to how music is made, where it's you know, hopefully simple to understand what you have to do, but everyone's answer is going to be different. And I feel like a lot of the time in these automation games, there is a reversion to the mean of what is the right answer. And over here, you know, not only by the nature of music being emotionally unpredictable and a deterministic system in automation games, you have clarity. You have this concept of node-based music, where music is, you know, to explain this in a simple way, is in the game, you place factory objects on a grid-like system. The distance between different things you place represents rhythm. And the music you create actually informs and generates you know, power and connects with other systems in the game as well. And it's that type of kind of spatial reasoning that I think is going to be new for players who might be used to this genre, which is going to be cool. And the third big thing is, I think there's a pretty weird narrative in the game that I think is going to ask people to really reflect on their sense of self and you know, where we find ourselves today in the current reality, and reflect on their own creativity. I feel like we're moving into a world where, you know, no matter what people's beliefs are on AI, it's going to impact our will in terms of creating things. And so I think we need new tool sets, and I think Future Vibe Check could be one in the music domain, to still enjoy play and enjoy creativity in a unique way. But by and large, you're going to make some sick beats, and you're going to make some spatial challenges while doing so. And every time you do it, you know, there's going to be a Tibetan singing bowl that tells you, that connects you back. You know, there's a lot of weird stuff in the game. You'll hear Tibetan singing bowls every time you unlock a chakra. So yeah, so that's part of the weird narrative in the game too.
I think that is actually the spatial reasoning is the stuff that I found most kind of emergently compelling, right? So normally when I'm thinking about a game that is sort of maybe I'd almost call it like, man, it's not even really a rhythm game, it's like a composition game in a sense, right? The thing I'm doing in the game is I'm creating music. What I'm essentially satisfying is an aesthetic urge, where I'm trying to make something that sounds good. But one of the things that's really compelling about Future Vibe Check is you have other urges that you need to, you know, you have other like tasks that you need your music to accomplish. And one of the things I found myself doing was altering my music and altering my factory both in order to kind of create a harmonious experience between the two of them, right? If that makes sense. Because, you know, the efficient placement in a factory is not necessarily going to make music that sounds great, and music that sounds great is not necessarily going to make for a good factory. And solving that puzzle to find a middle ground between those two things is I don't know, it's some of the stuff that I spent when I was spending the most amount of time sort of optimizing. I was optimizing for my song, the song of the factory. Yeah, exactly. to be good.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's like sometimes it'll be when I talk about the sublimation to creative energy, it's like, again, you know, it's an odd thing to combine deterministic systems with unpredictable systems. But I find that like that relentless optimization ends up being, well, maybe I sacrificed a little bit for a better rhythmic structure here. And I kind of like the feel of that more. And you know what? That's okay. But if players want to hyper optimize and run like rows of 16th notes together and just like drill beat,
I did sort of do that. I did it because I was building tower defenses for against the vibe stealers. Okay, you guys are gonna hate these. They're the vibe stealers. Okay,
that mechanic is changing soon.
Fair enough. Because I was building out a row of sort of these turrets to attack the vibe stealers, and I was cycling instruments because I had 4 essentially 16th notes all behind the turrets connected with the automation wires. And what I didn't want to have happen was hitting 4 like a bass like kick drums that fast. It didn't sound good, but I think I ended up settling on piccolo, okay, so we've obviously talked a lot about music. We've talked a lot about sort of the automation. Are there other core pillars of the game that you wanna brag about?
Yeah, I mean, I think the procedural music system itself is pretty robust. And you know, when I say like the goal is like anyone can jump in, make something with 10, 12, 15 instruments running at the same time, they can. And so the procedural music system kind of manages globally what is going to sound good at any given time, dependent upon the chord progression, the key, the scale, the mode, the tempo. And players are going to like slowly learn what these concepts are in music theory. They don't need to come in with any knowledge. And they're going to be able to play with them. So they'll be able to learn, okay, what does it really mean when I convert from a major to a minor? What does it really mean when a scale is a Lydian scale? And what does it mean when I change the rate of a chord progression? And so that's another big piece of the game is the music engine itself. And I almost see a world where, in a sandbox mode that people are actually making music procedurally in the game outside of the game mechanics and the story, which is kind of the core of the game itself. And part of that is another thing I'm pretty excited about, which is, today, I mean, I can't even read any sheet music anymore because it's been so many years. And I think more and more you're going to find more people that either don't have an instrument or can't read sheet music or are composing stuff in a desktop audio workstation, which are pretty powerful tools nowadays. But what was really exciting to me about some of the systems in Future Vibe Check is how do you encode more music information visually? And so what I mean by that is in the game, you're placing these nodes, right? And the distance between the nodes represents rhythm. So if one node is 4 cells away, it represents a beat. And so now you have a kind of a visual representation of rhythm, which is cool. The second layer of that is pitch. Well, the color of the node represents pitch. So now you can look at an image of your musical node network. You can see, oh, here's what the rhythm would be. Here's what the pitch would be. And then I've done other cool things where, in the game, players are going to unlock and rebuild shrines. And what those do is unlock more procedural music capabilities. And one of them, for example, is many games have day-night cycles. In this game, the day-night cycle is actually tied to the chord progression. So when a chord progression is about to end, it's nighttime. And when the chord progression, restarts, it's daytime. And other goofy things like, there's grass in the game. Grass shader was hell to get right, but right now. And when you change the tempo, the wind on the grass changes. So it's like, okay, if I jack up the tempo to like 250, it's like a hurricane. The grass is like moving super fast. And so the goal there was like, okay, if folks want to actually play around with music and share what they've built, which I think is a really cool thing that the game can do down the road, Well, now they can like send a video, and you can know right from a video, like, okay, this person's like at this point in the chord progression, here's the rhythmic structure, here are the instruments they're using, here's the pitch values of their song, because you can set them individually. And here's, based on the nighttime where they're at in their musical progression, which would be unintelligible as someone reading sheet music, unless they really understood what was happening. So that I think is very cool. But yeah, I mean, in terms of pillars, it's, as I said, I wanted to get weird with it on the narrative. So there's yoga moves, mantra, repetition, weird things like that. And kind of playing with this concept of consumption versus creation, where I think games today ask players for so much time to consume. And what I wanted to do is, if I'm going to ask players to invest so much time in consumption, in a consumptive mindset, are they actually creating something at the same time, and maybe learning something about, this, fundamental theories of music? And so that was a big thing. And then the other big pillar is deep interconnected systems. I love deep systems. Maybe I get too lost in the sauce with systems. I have to like dial back systems in the game.
Yeah, when you're starting to like build out Google spreadsheets. I've been here where it's just like, what am I doing with my life?
So I didn't want to go down the deep end there. But I wanted to have this, like, again, tying with the spiritual nature of the game. It's if I believe that we all are connected at some deeper level, and I want the game systems to kind of reflect that. Where the gathering mechanics are connected to the automation mechanics, which are connected to the defense mechanics. I kind of wanted that representation of mechanic with narrative as close as it can be.
Okay, so listen, what I'm hearing is that I would, in a sandbox mode, be able to rickroll someone by
Actually, that's a great idea. We need to do marketing campaigns of, like, I was thinking of, I've recreated the Super Mario Brothers theme and some other songs.
Yeah,
it's so easy to make songs now in the game, so we like. There's a lot we could do with.
There was a while where I was addicted to those, like Mario Paint, plays Cannibal Corpse, just because it's funny, and those are great. And so listen, stay on the lookout on the Akupara Games YouTube channel for more of this kind of content.
The ultimate dream would be, like, people are sharing some of the cool, weird factory creations they've made in the game, and it's recreating music or making their own. Like, I think that'd be hype.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Okay. What are some of the things that this game does for automation players that no other title does?
I think it's the fundamental innovation, which is you're experiencing what you built, right? The items you make are, things that help you create music that you can tweak and craft over time. And so there's hopefully a little bit more kind of immediacy to the crafting process, because that this is going to lead to some sound you're going to hear in the real world. And I think that's one big piece. The other piece is something you called out earlier, buddy, which was some of the spatial reasoning, where you have to really think about the placement of your node network that creates music, which also is really going back to interconnected systems, is how you drive automation for gathering, how you drive defense with your towers. And so I think those two things together are pretty unique features. I wanted to make sure that there was enough that automation players could come in and still have some familiarity with some of the core systems. Like, FVC is never, Feature Project is never going to compete with a Factorio or a Satisfactory or a Dyson Sphere program, nor does it need to, right? I'm never going to have a big factory like that. But what you can get is, I'm solving different problems spatially, and I'm experiencing what I built from my optimization. And I just don't think any other automation game does that right now.
Yeah, I think the experience is the truly uniquest thing I have ever experienced in automation. Every automation title is always built around, launching the rocket, right? But like, that is a payoff that takes hundreds of hours to achieve theoretically in most of these kinds. I mean, obviously I know people do it in like 8 minutes and speedrunners, whatever, who cares? In Future Vibe Check, the purpose is the music in
Yes.
so many ways, and it's so immediate, which is really unique. You know, I love the feeling both of building towards something, which there is so much of when it comes to sort of progressing through the tree and taking care of these shrines and everything, like progressing along those lines. But I also love that sometimes I'm making decisions just because I know that my material condition of playing is going to change because the music in my ear is going to be different.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so on the flip side of that, you know, if I'm someone who is deep in, you know, music theory, if I'm someone who's deep in, you know, like you said, like sort of audio systems in terms of composition, you know, what would you say to that person to bring them to come play Future Vibe Check?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you know, if someone has not played with a procedural music system before, because you have these two worlds. You have people who have built procedural music systems and play around with them a lot, which are fun. And then you also have a world of people who are making music in desktop audio workstations like Ableton, or you know, a variety of different tools like that, like Logic and so Cubase and things like that. And then you have a really small niche community of folks building systems around node-based music, which is a little bit of what Future Vibe Check does. What I haven't seen yet is, okay, if you want to compose things via nodes, and the beauty of that is, you know, all other composition is kind of linear timeline. I'm going to have a track here. It's going to start from 0 time, and it's going to play down this minute, and it's going to stop, and maybe I'll cut up that loop and splice it, but it's all beginning to end. The beauty of a node-based music system for composition is you can actually do things from a probability perspective and say, hey, I want to take this path 50% of the time. And we have, you know, things called, you know, signal splitters in the game that allow you to do this. Or I want to take this other drum beat path 30% of the time and another drum beat path a different percentage of the time. So now you have this kind of emergent compositional framework when you're making music, which I think folks who are really into music could really have fun with. And then on top of that, you have the procedural system. So if you don't want to fine tune or have specific control over what's being produced, but just want to experience different vibes, you know, what does a C sharp Dorian, you know, natural minor feel like? And with this chord progression at this tempo, with this time signature, and I don't want to compose all that. I just want it to work. And I want it to sound good in musical coherence of what those parameters are. You're going to be able to do that, but still have the benefit of the node-based systems. You know, if someone is using, I would never dare say that FEC can, you know, replace someone's compositional software, desktop audio workstation, but it could give them a tool set to experience something, you know, radically new. Actually, one musical composer said, who loved it, they're like, this is a gamified DAW. Now, I wouldn't even go that far because the DAW has like, you know, tons of features.
Right.
But that baseline experience of I'm gamifying the music creation experience. I already love creating music. Now I have numbers that go up with it. Like, oh my gosh, like that's amazing.
You know how much I love number go up. Okay.
Number go up constantly.
That is that's a really good point. That's not something I had really thought about before, but it makes a lot of sense. Like if I'm a 16-year-old kid and I really love music, but I'm having trouble with, you know, this happened to me, reading music like was so hard. I had to work so hard, you know what I mean? Like FACE or whatever, you know, like just learning the, like all of that stuff was really like painstaking. And I wonder if I were, you know, back in, you know, younger, much smaller buddy, was learning music through a tool like Future Vibe Check, right, where I could tactily play with it and watch the music progress right in front of my eyes. How much different that would have been.
For sure.
Well, listen, we're about out of time. Is there anything that you would like to add? Tell the folks at home. Okay.
No, I think we covered a good amount. I mean, the last thing is that, you know, the game has rhythm game mechanics too.
True.
Which is cool. I mean, one of the things there was, you know, I think we're so used to kind of monotonous actions in games like mining, let's say, where either you're holding a button or some people have innovated, like you're clicking at different areas. And in this game, you kind of mine to the beat or you mine pitches. You actually have to learn, you know, chords and, you know, match pitch values to chords, some melody matching, pitch matching. So I feel like players who it's not a rhythm game by any means, but folks who enjoy those types of mechanics or want to try something or have something new with some of the monotonous mining activities in some of these games, there's something there for them too, if that was a trigger for them to fall off on those games early. But yeah, ultimately, it's kind of, the game is like a meditation on consumption versus creation, and our inherent divine creativity, and giving more people tools to play around with that and experience that. So I'm excited to keep iterating and polishing it and getting more feedback and getting it out there to people's hands soon enough.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time. Actually, I have one final question.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about DJ Otter behind your left shoulder?
Oh,
I bet everybody has been thinking of this the whole time, and I didn't ask the question until right now. What's the story of DJ Otter, buddy?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a couple of key characters in the game. There, DJ Otter. There's a character known as the Conductor, and a character known as the Infinite. And you'll learn a little bit more about them kind of pretty early in the game. DJ Otter serves as a couple of different narrative devices. One, he helps you with the tutorial. Sure. So he's someone who's going to guide you in this new world, explain music concepts to you. But DJ Otter is actually a representation of this Buddhist concept called a bodhisattva, which is someone who's achieved enlightenment, but kind of has put off checking out completely to help others achieve enlightenment too. So that's why he takes on this role as the teacher in the early parts of the game. But there's some tricks up DJ Otter's sleeves that we'll learn about. He's trying to break free as well, just like you are. When you first play the game, you're gonna see DJ Otter's factory to help you understand some of the mechanics, and he's gonna guide you through that experience. So think of him as a fun guy, but he's made his own beats in the past. He's had a series of pretty phenomenal ones, top charts, and the goal is part of the goal.
The Despacito of the Future Vibe Check world comes from DJ Otter. Yeah,
sitting there in that background, but part of it's going to be is if you can make a better vibe than DJ Otter, I think that would be pretty impressive.
True. Okay. All right, that's it for real this time. Thank you so much. Please wishlist Future Vibe Check on Steam. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.